and Josh Simon. You're hoping Brady Hunt comes back. You have Michael Smith, who showed some stuff as a freshman. Well, add another tight end. It's not bad either. And look, you can always make sure your offensive line's fortified. We've seen it. This year, pretty lucky. Didn't have any major injury issues across the offensive line. Year before, everybody got hurt. So you probably want to get some, maybe add a veteran offensive lineman as well. So that's where you're at in the portal. This is just life of college football in 2024. So that's open today. We'll get into some more specifics on all of it here during the show. And obviously, the Citrus Bowl against Illinois, New Year's Eve, 3 o'clock kick. That means our coverage starts at 10 a.m. with Gamecocks game day, locally here at 107.5 The Game. Once the network kicks in, we will add our affiliate Myrtle Beach at 100.3 The Game as well. So, good news if you're a South Carolina Gamecock fan. Yeah, look, everybody wants to be in the college football playoff. I get it. But for many reasons we've discussed, that's not happening. Citrus Bowl, a nice option. Very nice option. You're playing an Illinois team that's been ranked on and off all year. Brett Bielema, they're physical. This year, they actually decide to throw the football every now and then. So their offense is a little bit more balanced. They get after you defensively. Again, very physical team. Again, it's stereotypical Big Ten football at Illinois. And Brett Bielema, that's his wheelhouse. Bielema tried to bring his ideas and philosophies to Arkansas and went. But Bielema very successful at Wisconsin and has been successful at Illinois. So be a fun matchup, hopefully. And who knows what kind of teams you're going to see. Who's going to opt out for South Carolina? Don't know. We're going to play a cut from Shane Beamer on that in a little bit. Who could opt out from Illinois? I don't know. But we'll see. Shane obviously hoping that the idea that this football team can win 10 games, which has only been done 4 other times in program history, might keep some guys from opting out. We'll see. The Nick Amon-Warries, the Kyle Kennards, the Demetrius Knights, the Rocket Sanders. What do? The TJ Sanders. What direction will they go? So we'll talk about that more later on the show as well. But Citrus Bowl, good deal for South Carolina. Also, Dow Loggins, the head coach at Appalachian State. Where'd that come from? I mean, good for Dow. We've had a chance to talk to him over the last couple years, on the air, off the air. Good guy. Good for him. So we'll get more into that on the show as well. But Dow Loggins, didn't see his name. I talked about this earlier on the Extra Point. I went back to say, did I miss his name on these different posts for lists of candidates at Appalachian State? And he wasn't on the list. The first wave of lists had Clayton White, the DC here. Even Sean Elliott's name was there for obvious reasons with connections. Garrett Riley was on the list, OC at Clemson, a couple other folks, but there was no Dow Loggins. Total under the radar visit to Boone a couple nights ago. Obviously, they were impressed with him. He was impressed with them, and boom, Dow Loggins is the head coach at Appalachian State. And what will that mean for South Carolina? And we'll get to Shane talking about he would love to have Dow as the OC for the bowl game. Dow would like to do it. That's a great idea in a perfect world, but can you do that if you're Dow Loggins? How many commitments and responsibilities are you picking up right off the jump where you go to Shane, I don't think I can do that job the way you want me to, or the way you need me to, or the way I want to. So then, my guess, and the guys at Gamecock Central wrote about this, Mike Shula. Mike Shula has been heavily involved in the offense. He's worked a lot with Lenoris Sellers. You can keep the offense with some continuity. Lenoris has continuity with the voice with him in Shula. I think if you can't have Dow, that's a way to go. And could Shula be the permanent offensive coordinator? Shane talks about in-house candidates on the presser last night, and we'll pop you that cut too during the show. And we'll see what happens. I think Mike Shula will be the OC. I just think Dow Loggins is going to go, Shane, man. Love you. Love to come back. But the list of crap I got to do right now is ridiculous. So my guess is that you'll see. I got to move over here. I got to fix these cameras. Oh, hi. How are you? Good to see you. My guess is that Mike Shula will be the offensive coordinator for the bowl game. Just my guess. Nobody's told me anything. So we'll see where all that goes. So we got a lot to talk about here. The College Football Playoff Committee came out with the 12. If you think about it logically, it shouldn't surprise you. Even if you were surprised at first. We'll get into that. Trust me. We got a lot of cuts from a lot of people about that, too. And we have those conference championship games on Saturday. They were fun. Most of them were close, except for Arizona State, who kicked Iowa State all over the field in the Big 12 championship game. We'll get into some conference championship game stuff as well. So we got a lot to get to on this show. But the biggest story, so I'm sitting here talking to Dave Adair earlier today. I always say, Dave, how you doing? And for some reason, Dave really tells me, which is always interesting. And I found something out about Dave today, that Dave is now a full-blown cat lady. Dave was trying to be a nice guy, had a little kitten come by the back of the apartment.
Meow.
Little cutie.
Cutie. Very cute.
You say, wow. And so you had an idea, I'll feed this kitten, and then your grand master plan was?
To maybe get my stepdaughter to adopt it for her little girl.
Trying to be a good grandpa.
Yeah.
Look at you. So you feed this kitten. Meow, 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 meow. And what happens, Dave?
It goes and tells all of its friends, all these strays and feral cats. There's like 10 of them suddenly show up at my door yesterday.
And so what'd you do, Dave?
Fed them.
Fed them all. So now you're the neighborhood cat lady.
Yeah, I have no tuna left.
Nice work, Dave.
Yep.
Good job. And did your stepdaughter take the kitten?
No. So now I have 10 cats.
So right now your grandmaster plan is in the crapper, and now you're the cat lady of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Nice work, Dave.
Yeah, and I can't really bring them in because, it's like $300 deposit and then $50 a month for each cat.
You can't do that.
I can't afford
Plus,
that.
God knows what they're carrying. They're outdoor cats. They're feral cats. You can't do that. And a feral cat is a whole different ball game.
Who wants to empty that many litter boxes?
Exactly.
I don't even like one. Hello.
Gee, we teach them how to use the toilet, Dave.
I had a friend that did that.
No way. Are you serious?
Strangest thing, and you'd be
Did it work?
At their house, and you'd go to the bathroom, and a cat come running in there in front of you and jump up on the toilet.
No.
Yeah, it was weird.
So the cat would push you out of the way and jump on the toilet and use the toilet before you.
Yep.
Did you actually use it after the cat did?
Yeah, I had to go.
You should have went and used the cat's litter box, and I'll show you something. Watch this, fella.
I had a girlfriend one time who told me she did that. Yeah, big surprise. So I just went in the cat litter box. That was funny, huh?
Did you laugh?
We broke up.
It's like, I got, ready? We can't see each other anymore. Why? You use a litter box. That just weirds me out. Sorry.
A little strange there.
Sometimes they can tell you too much. Yep. So basically, the moral of the story is you're stuck with the kitten, and you're now the neighborhood cat lady.
Yep.
Nice
That's
job.
absolutely right.
Nice job.
Yep.
So I just want to give you, the game listener, the insight of the life of Dave Adair, cat lady.
Yep.
All right, we'll get back in here. We'll talk some transfer portal. What's the latest with South Carolina comings and goings on day one of Portal Mania? It's a halftime show. Terry Ford, my favorite cat lady, Dave Adair. We're here till 3 on the game. Halftime show, Terry Ford, happy you hanging out with us today. We got the camera fixed. Got that right. Good to go. If you're watching on the Game TV, we appreciate you like always. Powered by Integrated Media and sponsored by Shepherd's Glass. Again, thank you very much for hanging out with us. All right, transfer portal, as it is now opened. Let's get Dave, get cut 9 ready for me with Shane talking about the transfer portal opening today. Let me know give me a thumbs up when you got it. So it will be cut 9, sir. Transfer portal opens, is this the right one? Yeah. Transfer portal opens on Monday.
I'd say it's a little bit of both. Our initial conversations yesterday were he wanted to stay and coach in the bowl, and my initial thoughts yesterday were that I wanted him to as well. But there's also, this was before he announced the job, and as he's finding out what I found out when Coach Tanner offered me the job 4 years ago, last Thursday or Friday, whatever it was, there's a lot that comes at you when you say yes and it gets announced that you don't expect. And he's realizing that right now, and it's a lot. It was hard for me balancing being the head coach and going back to Oklahoma to coach the tight ends in the Big 12 championship game against Iowa State. There was a lot on my plate. He's an offensive coordinator doing the same thing in an era of transfer portal and NIL, which I didn't have to deal with when I first got hired. There was a portal, but it wasn't quite like it is right now as well. So we don't have to decide anything right now. We'll see how he handles this transition, and I want to do what's best for him, and I want to do what's best for our program also. So those are all things that we're working through. But initial conversations were, finish this thing out, which Kirby did when he took the Georgia job, and Dan did when he took the Oregon job, and I'm sure there's others that I'm not thinking of. Yeah,
we'll see. And obviously with Shane talking about Dow Loggins, and is Dow going to coach the bowl game? We'll see. Again, his idea is, yeah, man, I'll coach the bowl game. But, think about sometimes you take a new gig or you move away and all of a sudden, hey, man, I was going to come help you, I don't know, put your deck on. I can't do it. I'm just too busy. I got all this stuff going on. So we'll see. And if not, like we talked about in the opening riff of the show, Mike Shula, I think, would be the in-house dude to step up and take the OC/play caller duties for the bowl game. And I think he's an in-house candidate, absolutely. You keep the continuity of the offense. You also would keep the continuity of the guy in Lenore Sellers' ear, because a lot of talk about how good of a job Mike Shula did with Lenore Sellers this year. So that would be a huge continuity positive. We'll see. We'll see where that goes. All right, now here's Shane talking about the transfer portal opening today. Hit it, Dave.
Yeah, we've had some guys that announced they were going in or decided to go in. Every conversation I had has been good. Guys just looking for opportunities to go somewhere and play a little bit more, and certainly understand that and, wish those guys well. In regards to tomorrow, there's guys that have already announced that they're going in the portal, which some of those we're certainly eager to talk to, and it'll be good to be able to connect with them tomorrow for the first time as well. And then we'll see what happens. It's the beginning of the portal window, but we've talked about it as a staff. There's certainly we've got to attack the portal, and we've got to get better. And you look at the guys that we brought in from the portal last year, two of the most impactful guys that we've had, Torricelli Simpkins and Demetrius Knight. Those were two guys that we didn't even add until late in the portal window being open. So we're not going to, attack everything tomorrow where we're done with our football team by tomorrow night. It's a process, but certainly there's some guys that we're eager to talk to tomorrow. And in regards to anyone else on our team deciding to do anything, I hope not, but that's just the lay of the land and in college football nowadays. So we'll see what happens. But I think we're in a pretty good shape, pretty good place. But you always anticipate stuff going the wrong way too.
All right, so Nick Elkskins, whose name I always mess up, and also Reed McKeska and Connor Cox. Elkskins, McKeska, and Cox, 3 tight ends that put their names in the portal because they want to go play. Totally understand. Absolutely. We'll get to maybe some visits and some targets South Carolina has in the portal to bring in a second. But 803-404-6100. James has been hanging in there from Sumter. James, appreciate your patience. You're on the halftime show on the game. How you doing?
Man, doing well. How y'all doing today?
Doing all right, man. Appreciate you giving us a ring. What's on your mind?
Man, it's just y'all pretty much is on top of everything, man. How important the portal going to be for us this year. The one thing I think is Braswell, the running back that left. I think it's going to be important for us to. I don't think we need a rocket center this year because I actually think the kid that we got last year from SC State.
Yeah.
I really think he's pretty much ready to take over that spot. He looked good in spot duty, so I think if we hit that portal for maybe a very quality SEC, ACC, or something like that, backup running back, I think we'll be fine with some more of the young kids we got coming in. As far as that wide receiver room, I think it is pretty much established as well. I'm pretty sure we got 2 starters out of it. Yeah, I agree with you that we may need one portal receiver that we know exactly what he's going to give us, and it is no question that he's going to give us that. We just need one veteran like that, I believe. That offensive line room, man, I think that is probably one of the best in the SEC, man. I know I'm a Gamecock and I'm a homer, but man, with the 4 and 5 stars we signed the last couple of years, man, it is time for that offensive line room to establish itself as one of the best in the country, if not just in the SEC. And you ought to know about our quarterback. I think Shane has that lined up almost to perfection with him coming in next year as a quote-unquote redshirt sophomore, but he'll be draft eligible. We'll have Gunner coming in, who will probably redshirt. We have the young guy we got last year, who will be a redshirt freshman. So I think we where we need to be at as far as this 12-team program, this 12-team playoff. So next year I'm expecting nothing less than being one of those top 12 teams, man. I'll hang up now and listen to you, man.
Thanks, James. Always good hearing from you, man. Yeah, going back to James' comment about Juwan Howell, I like Howell. Look, it's only bits and pieces, and usually it's, Howell's got in the game when you've had a big lead and you're just getting dudes some run. But Howell showed you a little something where you watched it and you go, hey, that guy might have a little, he might have some serious upside and potential. And then Oscar Attaway could come back as well. Matthew Fuller, the freshman this year. Yeah, losing Braswell, I mean, Braswell's a 4-star coming in, but he looked around and said, "Look, man, there's a lot of traffic here. I want to go somewhere where I get more of an opportunity to possibly, be a 1, a 1A, a 1B, a 2 that gets, carries, whatever." So I get Braswell, but the running back room has some possibilities, and like James and I were talking about, it would be good to bring in maybe another veteran type running back who could be part of your rotation, just in case. But I like the potential of Juwan Howell, who came in from South Carolina State. Absolutely. And, yes, the offensive line room is full with 4 stars. You got the 5-star and Josiah Thompson, but a lot of 4-star recruits. It's time for some of these guys to develop. It's time for, a Marquis Anderson. You saw, saw some hope with some guys and some growth this year, but you need more. And we'll see if anybody transfers out. If they all stay, there's a lot of possibilities in that offensive line room with the pedigree that some of these guys brought in from high school. Like I said, being a good amount of 4-stars in there. So we'll see. But wide receiver-wise, there is one very interesting name that went into the transfer portal we're going to get into next that we'll see if South Carolina could pull that off. And also, transfer portal visit from an offensive lineman as well we'll get into next. It is the halftime show. Terry Ford hanging out. Dave's here. We go till 3 here on the game. We are hanging out. What you're talking about, we're talking about, everybody's talking about. Let's see what we got here. Okay, ready. Follow me, Dave. See if I get them all. Transfer portal, Citrus Bowl, Dow Loggins. Now the new head coach at Appalachian State. What does that mean to South Carolina when it comes to an offensive coordinator? College football playoff we haven't gotten to yet. Conference championship games from the weekend we haven't gotten to yet. And more importantly, you're now a cat lady. Have I got it all?
Pretty much.
Good. Okay, nailed it. That's what we're talking about.
What'd you think of the ACC trophy? Yeah, it's kind of. It's like it should be better. It's like
they don't have the money the SEC does. I mean, they probably traded out a local shop.
It's like somebody melted down some tin cans and
maybe
painted it.
A lot of people like have those old trophies in their basement when they were kids, like an old bowling trophy, old baseball trophy, football trophy. And maybe they got one of those.
We have one out here for like 5th place and something.
Yeah, it's gigantic too. What is that thing? I hate to see the first place trophy.
Really?
Jeez. 5th place one's pretty big. Usually the 5th place one is like, just a ribbon. So that's pretty good. Yeah. That trophy could have been better.
Yeah, and it had a little stand with 2 pegs in it.
Weren't you waiting for it to break and fall off?
Yeah, I was. I was like, what is that thing?
Yeah.
Should be better.
ACC doesn't have the money the SEC does.
That's true.
They can't go get the really nice trophies. You see Jim Phillips, ACC commissioner. Anybody got a trophy at their house they're not using? Anybody?
Yeah, we can paint over the whatever was on it.
We'll re-engrave it. Don't worry about it. Very nice. All right, so transfer portal-wise, a very interesting name. Dane Keys, and Dane Key, wide receiver, Kentucky, has hit the portal. And like James from Sumter and I were yipping about last segment, it'd be nice to bring, look, you got a lot of possibilities at wide receiver. You got Nick Harbor, who is the last month of the year, Nick started to look like a real collegiate wide receiver, to his credit. Obviously, he's put in a lot of work. That's good. Mazio Bennett, as a true freshman, showed us some flashes and has a lot of upside and potential. But it'd be nice to add a guy in that wide receiver position who has been productive and can be productive. I mean, you have Jared Brown coming back from, this year. Jared Brown made some plays, also was hurt. But I think if you added a Dane Key, who has had some solid years at Kentucky, despite whatever the Wildcats are or aren't on offense, especially this year. So Dane Key would be interesting if you could find a way to pull that guy out of the portal and bring him to South Carolina. Then you had a legit veteran-type target for Lenore Sellers to go with Jared Brown and Nick Harbor and Mazio Bennett and the 4 or 5 freshman wide receivers you brought in this recruiting class. You figure one of them could be this upcoming year's Mazio Bennett. Who knows? But it'd be good to fortify that position with a veteran who has been productive in the past. Just saying. I think Dane Key would be interesting. According to Gamecock Central, there'll be a visit through the portal, offensive lineman coming through from Vandy, Gunnar Hansen. He's been 4 years at Vanderbilt, 6'5", 330. He's got experience starting at both tackle and guard. Spent a lot of time at left tackle, right tackle, left guard to get specific. So he can help you all over the offensive line. And you are going to need help because Torricelli Simpkins gone, Kamar Bell gone. Your 2 guards, whoop, see ya. Now again, you have youngins here at South Carolina already on campus who are 4-star recruits. You got Ball, you got Anderson. But again, it'd be good to have a veteran just in case those 2 guys aren't ready yet or aren't playing at the level you would hope or developing at the level you would hope. It'd be nice to have someone like a Gunnar Hansen who could play either guard spot or could play left guard in either tackle spot, I should say. So that's where you're at. I mean, a tackle, you figure you feel okay. Look, Josiah Thompson should get much better from his freshman to sophomore year at left tackle. Case and Henry, you're hoping, but there's no guarantee there. You got Tree Babalade, who's hasn't transferred or anything. He's still on the roster, who could possibly step in and take over the tackle spot there if Case and Henry can't. I know Tree played left tackle for Josiah Thompson, but, tackle position could be open depending on how the program feels about Case and Henry in year one and how he develops in the offseason going into year two. But a guy like Gunnar Henson could be very valuable because he can play multiple positions. So we'll see. But Gunnar Henson planning to do a visit to South Carolina, the Vanderbilt offensive lineman. Again, been at Vandy for 4 years. I'm guessing 1 more year of eligibility. So that could be a thing. Possibly. So we'll see what goes on with the portal because obviously it's craziness. What goes on in the transfer portal. We remember it last year. And like, Shane said, they added Demetrius Knight was one of the best gets in the portal for South Carolina. Didn't add him till later on in the portal season. So we shall see. Another offensive lineman that's being talked about is Jordan White from Western Kentucky. He's another offensive lineman. I'm sorry, from Liberty. My bad. He was good for been good the last 2 years at Liberty. And he's going to have a visit to South Carolina as well. So we brought up Dane Key, the wide receiver. So that's kind of just, nothing. Everything's really fluid. The other one, too, I just saw Luke Haas, tight end from Arkansas. 2 years of eligibility left, had 26 catches for 324 yards and 4 touchdowns this past season. And again, so South Carolina might look to add a veteran wide receiver with some reception numbers to go with a Michael Smith and a Brady Hunt. So we'll see where all that goes. That's kind of the latest there. And so far, knock on wood, cross fingers, all that good stuff. No significant portal losses yet. So we'll see where everything goes. Halftime show, Terry Ford. Dave's hanging out with us till 1. Then he's got cats to feed, so he'll be out. But we roll till 2. Then Elijah's going to jump in and do the last hour of the halftime show. Help us out as I've got to go do boring corporate radio stuff. And then 3 to 6, the postgame show tomorrow. Kicking it right at 3 o'clock with Jay and Elijah will be Ray Tanner, still the athletic director at South Carolina. Coach will come on and talk about, obviously, tons of different topics. His successor, his timeline, his new role. South Carolina going to the Citrus Bowl. Where things are, maybe his thoughts on the college football playoff, maybe his thoughts on the world of college athletics moving forward. Whatever Coach Tanner wants to talk about, that'll be tomorrow on the postgame show with Jay and Elijah from, I'm guessing, typically Coach hangs out for an hour from 3 to 4, unless Jay says something dopey and makes him mad. He might just hang up. So that's tomorrow from 3 to 4. Athletic Director Ray Tanner with Jay and Elijah here on The Game. Our Lawyer Lisa Special Teams contest is still rolling. We're going to take this through the bowl game. So if you haven't signed up yet, go at 1075thegame.com. Click on the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams contest. Fill out the little entry deal. It takes about 41 seconds. Hit submit, and you're in. South Carolina scores a special teams touchdown. We will do a drawing the next time the early game is on at 7:30. And if your name is drawn, you're a winner. I'm guessing, Dave, even if there's not a special teams touchdown, we're giving away the dough. One way or the other, money's going.
That's what I hear.
That's the rumor. So,
by the way, that it rotates through. People always like, oh, there, and all they had was Terry's face. I was like, well, you have to rotate through that banner.
You got it. Exactly. It's a little flippy thing. It's going to flip to different things. And once it flips on the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams contest, you click on it, boom, there. Then you do the little field you fill out, and then you click submit. You got to wait for all the other flippy things to go by.
I love that call. All I see is Terry's face.
No one needs to see that. Jeez, I tell you. If I could AI Brad Pitt's face on this video stream for me, I'd be a happy man. All right. We'll hop back in. We've talked about the Citrus Bowl. We've talked about Dow Loggins. Let's get back to Citrus with Shane. Some thoughts from Shane Beamer on the Citrus Bowl as South Carolina will roll there New Year's Eve afternoon against the Fighting Illini of Illinois. Shane, discussing the fact that Citrus selected South Carolina. South Carolina was picked by the Citrus Bowl, and Shane will explain that and talk about how important that is. That's coming up on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Uncle Dave is here until he has to depart here in a few minutes right here on the game. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Roland Davis here, punching buttons. We go to 2. Then Elijah will take over, roll the last hour of the halftime show, and then Jay and Elijah with the postgame show 3 to 6 here on the game. All right, real quick, Firehouse sub-text, the hour 803-404-6100. Unnamed texter says, I'm really happy about the Citrus Bowl. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be great. Something different. It's been a while since the Gamecocks have gone to Orlando, but I'm still bleeped about being out of the college football playoff. I get you. We're going to get into that here in just a little bit during football in the 1 o'clock hour. Totally understand. There's a lot of people bleeped about the college football playoff, and we're going to talk a ton about that coming up. Just when you don't have a process in place, when you don't have a set criteria on what matters the most or what matters in your decision-making, this is what you get. The perception is that these is a room of goofs who make it up as they go along and throw stuff against the wall and hopefully it sticks, and they change and manipulate the numbers to their agenda of the week. Now, is that fair? Of course not. But we're not in the room. They're not live streaming it. We just know the results, and the results have no consistencies and make no sense. And I don't care if you're South Carolina, Ole Miss, Alabama, Miami, SMU, all of it doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. So at the end of the day, I get it. And hopefully they will start tweaking the system. But you know what? Here's what, again, because I'm cynical in my old age, I think they like this just the way it is. You know why? The powers that be in college football care about, number 1, money. Number 2, money. Number 3, money. And number 4, exposure, talk, promotion, marketing. They have been in the news like nobody's business with this. There's an old saying that no publicity is bad publicity. And yeah, we might be sitting here crushing them for their lack of consistencies, their lack of what it feels like any kind of process, plan, criteria. The idea seems like they don't even watch the games. But they're probably sitting there with their feet up laughing. Because all this has done is drawing eyeballs and voices and clicks to college football. They're going, we're going to do this again next year, just like the way we did it this year. Because this debate, again, we've spent so much time on it. Think about, just take what we're doing and then move it all across the college football world. Radio, TV, video stream, internet, social media. This is gold for the world of college football. You can't buy this much publicity. And we do. The way this thing plays out, it's like when you're driving down the road and there's a 44-car pileup on the other side. What do? You rubberneck your butt off. That's what this is. This is a huge car accident, and we can't stop looking at it. They'll do it again next year. It worked so well this year for them. There'll be no rhyme or reason. Somebody's going to be angry, and it's all going to happen again. Logic, that was part of the car crash. Logic and common sense. So we're going to get more into it in the 1 o'clock hour, but to the texter, yeah, I mean, South Carolina, you got a right to be upset because, head-to-head meant something for South Carolina, Alabama, and Missouri, but it meant nothing when Tennessee had beat Alabama earlier this year, but Alabama was ahead of Tennessee. See, none of it's consistent. So, yes, absolutely. But you know what? I don't tell people how to feel, but enjoy the Citrus Bowl. This is cool. You're going to play a ranked team out of the Big Ten in Illinois. It's in Orlando. Chance to win 10 games. Yeah, it's not the college football playoff, but, it's still pretty cool. All right, Dave, I was going to grab a cut. Remember what cut I was going to get, Dave? I went on that tangent. What the heck am I talking about? Cut 16. Yeah, speaking of Citrus Bowl, Shane Beamer wants you to know and is very proud of the fact the Citrus Bowl chose South Carolina.
Couldn't be more fired up about where we're going. If you're not in the playoff, this is the best possible destination to be going to, and it's nothing against any other bowl, but they chose us. And that's a strong statement that after the playoff teams, the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl gets their choice of an SEC team. And there's a lot of SEC teams out there, a lot of them that are ranked that aren't in the playoff. And for them to say, we want the South Carolina Gamecocks is a huge, it's just an awesome statement, and can't thank them enough. And that's what I would say to them is thank you.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, obviously the Citrus Bowl chose South Carolina. They could have had Alabama. I'm believing could have had Ole Miss. And my guess is they looked at the three schools and figure for this year in this situation, South Carolina will travel better. You saw Jacksonville was garnet and black for the Gator Bowl. South Carolina fans took over Jacksonville. Do you think Alabama fans are going to go, woo, Citrus Bowl? No, they're going to go like this. We got screwed out of the college football playoff. Alabama fans aren't happy about going to the Citrus Bowl. Ole Miss fans might not be happy with it either. But, again, the bowl people in Orlando, they figure South Carolina's going to travel. And the Gamecocks have already sold their first allotment of tickets. They got to go back and get more. I have a feeling there's going to be a huge Gamecock presence in Orlando for that week. Just saying.
You can't spell citrus without USC.
Look at you. Look at you over there. Look at you and your fancy. Where'd you graduate college? Look at you. Look at you.
South Carolina.
Look at you go with your Mensa brain work over there. Wow. It's impressive, Dave. That was impressive. So, Citrus Bowl picks the Gamecocks, and again, it's South Carolina and Illinois. Our coverage will start 10 a.m. local Gamecocks game day here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia. Then the network kicks in at noon, and we will join our affiliate 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach, and kickoff will be 3 o'clock. Figure since we're the flagship, Dave, of South Carolina Gamecocks football, we should get like a tub of endless Cheez-Its.
I agree.
I love Cheez-Its, man. I would kick a box. I just sit, watch TV, and kick a box of Cheez-Its. They're the bomb. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors is next. Dave, appreciate your help, my friend. Go feed those cats. Halftime show in the game. Halftime show. We've switched cameras. Now you get the producer view because I got to punch my own bleeping buttons. Dave had to go. Appreciate you hanging around with us as we cook this for another hour. Then Elijah's going to help us out. Jump in, finish up the halftime show for me, and then roll with Jay on the postgame show from 3 to 6. Again, Ray Tanner tomorrow on the postgame show. Ray wrapping up his tenure as athletic director here at South Carolina. Many things to talk to with Coach Jay and Elijah. Again, we'll talk with Ray Tanner tomorrow at 3 on the postgame show. All right, football, and more football in the 1 o'clock hour. Always sponsored by our friends at Atlantic Windows and Doors. A lot to get into. College football playoff. Started this in the last segment. Look, this thing, it's a mess. And, you know, the 4-team playoff at times was a mess, right? It really was a mess last year. But the thought process, and I remember this happening. People saying, hey, you know, once this thing goes to 12, it's going to make a lot more sense and be a lot more easier. And I was like, okay, maybe. But if you got the same crew called the College Football Playoff Committee doing this the same way they did with 4, it's probably going to be the same way with 12. Because instead of number 5 and number 6 yelling, number 13 and 14 are going to yell, or number 12 is going to yell. And that's what we got. It's almost like we thought because there'd be more teams in it that the degree of the margin of error would go down, right? I think looking at it now, it's kind of like, for an example, I'm an awful cook. I can make like 5 things. One is spaghetti with meat sauce. Any goof in the world can throw pasta in boiling water, put a can of meat sauce on, and maybe ground up some hamburger and mix it all together and make spaghetti and meat sauce. It's one of the 5 things I can do. Again, it's not very difficult. But I can do that. That I can do. This is like the 4-team playoff. They could do that with minimal damage, right? Because it's only 4 teams. And it took till last year for it to totally crater into absurdity, right? It's like me cooking the spaghetti with meat sauce. Every now and then it might, you know, not be as good, but I can do it, right? And it typically turns out okay. But this 12-team thing, now you've added, you know, automatic bids, and you've added, you know, more bells and whistles. And now it's sort of like me making my spaghetti and meat sauce, but now I'm going to add sausage and garlic. And I'm going to get fancy. And it's going to be a disaster, and I'll be calling the fire department or the EMT as we're pumping people's stomachs after they eat it. It's kind of what this has been. We're pumping people's stomachs. And it's not going to change. They might tweak it a bit, but they like this. They like the chaos. They like sports radio screaming and yelling all over the country, and, you know, now video stream shows and podcasts and social media and, you know, websites and digital platforms, everybody yelling about the college football playoff and the playoff committee and who they're going to pick and who they're not going to pick. The NFL, as good as the NFL is, they have a special draft show. Yes, they take 3 days of calling names and we watch it. The Combine, bunch of big guys in their underwear getting weighed, we watch it. NFL has a schedule release. We watch it. But the NFL doesn't have a playoff schedule release or a playoff team release. Why? We know the NFL, it's cut and dry. They have a system, and there's a criteria and a process. And you know it. It's there. You click on it, and you read it, and you see the way the tiebreakers go. We see what's important. It's easy, it's simple, it's clean. Nobody talks about it. Nobody yells and screams about getting hosed out of the NFL playoffs. You know what the deal is, you know what the rules are, and you know the pecking order of how the criteria goes. And if you don't make it, you didn't make it because you did not hit any of the, check any of the boxes that need to be checked. It's very simple. But that's boring. Like Mike Leach said, committees, baby. It's where we're at. Let's have a committee where no one is objective. How about that? And then we can scream and yell and debate because debate is fun. And debate brings listeners and viewers and eyeballs and all that good stuff. This thing's not going to change. It's a flawed process, and they don't care. They don't. So 1 week strength of schedule matters, and next week it doesn't. 1 week head-to-head matters, and next week it doesn't. What this committee did was they protected the conference championship games. Let's just be honest. That's what they did. If SMU would have got blown out by 3 scores, which it looked like it was going to happen, then this committee would have had a better case to present for Alabama. But SMU came back, tied the game, decided not to cover the kickoff, and Clemson got really good field position, took advantage of it, got their freshman kicker in position for a really long field goal attempt, and to his credit, he nailed it. But SMU losing like that, an undefeated ACC champion, undefeated in the league, 1 loss on the year before the championship game. If you knock SMU out and put in Alabama, which that committee wanted to do really, really bad, I guarantee it. Again, Alabama, big brand, lots of eyeballs, TV ratings, money. They knew they were opening a door where in the future, if a team is in the same position as SMU, they might go like this, we'll pass on your conference championship game. But thanks for inviting us. We're good. We got other plans. Got to take the wife out. They're not going to go because they don't want to get SMU'd. SMU would become a verb. I don't want to get SMU'd. So because conference championship games make the conference a lot of money, they're a showcase event, and they matter right now because you've baked in the automatic qualifier. If you win it, you're in the college football playoff. You have made these games matter. But if you take a dump on a team that made it to their conference championship game, who only has 1 loss and was undefeated in their league, and you kick them to the curb because they lost the conference championship game, and you put a team in that didn't even make it to their conference championship game, and you say it's because of strength of schedule, beating more top 25 teams, the same stuff you used for Alabama to leap Miami would be the same argument to leap SMU. But again, you wanted to protect the conference championship game. Dollars. It's all about dollars. And so SMU gets it. So now the strength of schedule people are mad at you. Saying, wait a minute, what good is playing a tough schedule if a team with the strength of schedule in the 60s gets into the college football playoff and a team with a strength of schedule in the teens who beat more top 25 teams in that squad, they don't get in. And then the argument, playing in the SEC is a heck of a lot harder than playing in the ACC. And schedules aren't the same and wins aren't the same. No offense, but beating Wake Forest isn't the same as even, beating, Auburn. Ward Manuel, the guy they put in front of the microphones to take the punches for the College Football Playoff Committee, he said, no. We do value strength of schedule, and that was important to us in deciding between SMU and Alabama.
We looked at the number of wins that Alabama had against ranked opponents. We looked at SMU's schedule, and they were undefeated in conference. Their losses were to ranked teams. But we also looked at Alabama's loss to unranked teams. And it was quite a debate. I mean, we value strength of schedule. That's why Alabama, as a 3-loss team, is ranked ahead of other teams that have 2 losses. It is something that we talk about quite a bit. But in the balance of it, in the way SMU played in that game, losing on the last-second field goal, great win by Clemson, great game, we just felt that in this particular case, SMU still had the nod at 10 above Alabama. But it's no disrespect to Alabama's strength of schedule. It's merely looking at the entire body of work for both teams.
Interesting. Because this same committee looked at the entire body of work for Alabama and Miami and decided to pop Alabama over Miami for the same reasons that you make the argument Alabama should pop over SMU. But in this case, you don't do it. Why? Because SMU lost on a last-second field goal from 57 yards out? What if SMU loses that game by 3 scores to Clemson? They were down double digits. Then what do, Ward? Then what do we got? What data point are you going to pull out of your lower extremities for that one? That's the point. Because we don't know what goes on in there. Look, I'm totally on that live stream at bandwagon. Absolutely. We don't know what goes on in there. So we just make up our opinions on what we see, and what we see makes us shake our head. Unless our team gets in, then we love it, right? Oh, yeah, they got it right, baby. Because that's just human nature. But when you don't get in, or you're just objectively watching this, you go, what a mess. Because 1 week, again, strength of schedule matters. Mattered last week. Didn't matter this week as much. Okay. Head-to-head. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. Agendas is one thing that always matters in this. And I think I really do believe the agenda of, keeping the conference championship game a thing and not threatening or putting yourself in a position for future opt-outs of conference championship games was the reason why SMU got it. SMU had a really good year. Look, you lost 2 games. You lost to BYU, who was ranked at the time and are still ranked, and you lost to Clemson, who was ranked in the ACC championship game. Both those games are close. You had a good year. And you made it to college football playoff. And because you want to save the sanctity of the conference championship game, SMU's in. Now, should they be penalized for playing in a game that Alabama's not playing in? I mean, do you take into account you made it to the conference championship game over a team that didn't make it to their conference championship game? These are all the things we don't know. We don't know how much weight is at anything because we don't know what's going on in the room. I really think they need to make it fully transparent, live stream this joker. Make it a reality show. You can make some serious money. But in the meantime, we look at this thing as a mess. You know what else looks at as a mess is Shane Beamer. Here's Shane. I want to make sure I get the right one here. Here's Shane talking about what he would do different when it comes to the college football playoff.
There's a lot, I think, that can be as I said, Phil, I was in Atlanta yesterday with a lot of media members, with a lot of people from the SEC office, players and coaches on both teams, fans, and heard from a lot of them about their opinion about Gamecock football, and it was very positive. I think my biggest frustration right now was maybe just the inconsistencies of what's important. Injuries were a factor last year. Florida State got left out. And I know there were only 4 teams compared to 12. Injuries were a factor last season, but apparently injuries weren't a factor this season when you look at our quarterback situation when he gets hurt on the last play of the LSU game, and we've got 265 yards of offense at that point. And, still had an opportunity to win that game, but that is a factor to me. Is strength of schedule important or not? Is it just important to go win games and it doesn't matter who you beat? This year, apparently, that strength of schedule didn't matter because we've got 4 ranked wins in the month of November alone. And there's teams in the playoffs that are over. I think I read that there's 3 or 4 teams that haven't even beaten a ranked team this year, if I'm not mistaken. So how are they going to look at strength of schedule? I know the chairman, I read a quote today that said the chairman said they absolutely look at it. Well, no, they don't. Can't tell me they do. Is injuries a factor? And then I'll have a hard time, Phil, ever getting over his comments on Tuesday night that no matter what happened this weekend, nothing was going to change. That really bothers me. We didn't play. Alabama didn't play. Miami didn't play. Ole Miss didn't play. But when you sit there and you say we're going to evaluate the total body of work, how in the heck you don't take into account South Carolina just beat the ACC champion on their home field 7 days ago, and that's not I said I'm not going to use the D word and the P word. How that's not a factor in the playoffs, That one is mind-boggling. And again, the committee has a tough job. And as I said, I know we're flawed. Ole Miss has some flaws. We lost head-to-head. I get all that. But to sit there and say we're not going to evaluate South Carolina further after tonight or after their Clemson game because their resume is complete, that's bullcrap. I mean, we beat the ACC champion, and to say we're not going to take a step back, really reevaluate everything, determine the 12 best teams, I have a hard time with that one. So are we evaluating the total body of work, or are we just evaluating what makes things convenient for your rankings? That's what I would say.
There's Shane. We'll discuss Shane's comments and look at the bracket next here on the Halftime Show. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors in the Game. The Nest, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista. Look, if you're doing stuff for your home, maybe you want some new appliances for the new year, for the holidays, maybe a new tub to just soak and chill in, maybe new lighting, new fixtures, new dishwasher, new microwave, just any of those type of things. The experts of the Vista have been around, the experts of the Nest have been around about 70 years. You go to thenestshowroom.com and just look at all of the fantastic appliances. Bosch, whether you're cooking or cleaning, phenomenal appliances. What you do is you look, you call, you set up an appointment, you tell them your vision and your budget. You go in, you take a walk around the showroom, and the Nest will get it done for you. 1331 Gadsden, make that call, give them a ring, and set up everything. 803-978-2025. Call the Nest in the Vista. Football, and more football in the 1 o'clock hour. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the Game Halftime Show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out with us, whether you're listening on 107.5 The Game in Columbia, 100.5 The Game in Florence, 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. You're watching us on our YouTube channel, which we always appreciate, at The Game TV Radio on YouTube. Or you can watch us on our website as well, 1075thegame.com. You can go there. You can watch the video. Absolutely. Or you can listen on the 1075 The Game app. iTunes, Google Play. Listen to us anywhere. We'll get to you at 803-404-6100. Hang in there. All right. Shane's comments, I get it. I do. If you're South Carolina, you're like, okay, wait a minute. So head-to-head didn't matter earlier in the year when you had Alabama ahead of Tennessee, even though Tennessee beat Bama, but now you're using head-to-head against us when it comes to Ole Miss and Alabama. Even though our overall resume with the strength of schedule, top 25 wins, things of that nature, we are better than both of those teams. And our losses, we don't have a loss as bad as either one of those teams. Does that even matter? I don't know. Totally understand where Shane's coming from. And the fact, you beat the ACC champion in their house. Doesn't matter. Did nothing to help you. It's frustrating. What can help you, what you can't. If you're Alabama, you're frustrated. Yeah, you lost to Vandy in Oklahoma. You put yourself in that spot. Every one of these teams put themselves in this position in some way, shape, or form. But if you're Alabama, you're like, wait a minute, last week, our wins over the top 25, wins over 500-plus teams, and our strength of schedule mattered when we leaped Miami, but it doesn't matter to leap SMU. Makes no sense. If you're SMU, you would have been like, wait a minute. Like if SMU didn't make it, you'd be like, wait a minute. We were an undefeated regular season conference champion. The week before the conference championship game, we were safely and securely in the field, and because we played in our conference championship game, which Alabama didn't, we're going to be penalized because we lost. Why the hell will we play in a conference championship game ever again? So again, because there's no rules. The rules are what the committee makes up as the weeks go along. Totally get it, man. It's great for our business because we can sit here and blather on about it. But in fairness and logic and common sense, it's a dumpster covered in an inferno going down the river. All right, these brackets are interesting. Nobody thinks these games are going to be very close. Texas by 11 against Clemson in Austin. Winner gets Arizona State. It's a nice get for either Clemson or Texas. Even though Arizona State, man, I know it's Big 12, but they rolled Iowa State and they have some serious belief going on in Tempe. But I think if Texas beats Clemson, which they should, they're 11-point favorite. I think they would be able to handle Arizona State and move on to the semifinals. Tennessee, Ohio State. Ohio State's 7.5-point favorite, but look, if Tennessee can hang early and not let Ohio State, get rolling, this thing could get interesting. It really could. Kirk Herbstreit has a great comment about Ohio State playing at home and how that might not be a good thing.
After the way the Ohio State season ended against Michigan, I don't know if it would have been better for Ohio State to go on the road to get away from their home crowd that'll be booing after their third down not converting and the punter comes out, booing Ryan Day. They'll have to rally and have a good start to that game, or it could turn sideways with the home crowd, in my opinion.
Yeah, think about that. That didn't cross my mind till Kirk Herbstreit brought up. I'm like, yeah, he's right. Folks in Ohio are not happy right now. They might be the most bummed, depressed, irritated, angry team in the college football playoff because that lost to Michigan. And if Ohio State scuffles early against Tennessee or the Volunteers get up on them early, could be ugly. We'll look at the other matchups in the bracket, but 803-404-6100. Let's get our buddy Gamecock Larry in here. Gamecock Larry, thanks for hanging. You're on the halftime show on the Game. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing all right. I'm home, and I want to thank 107.5 and all my Gamecock Nation with your thoughts and prayers. I'm going to be all right. But I think Clemson going to get knocked out by Texas. SMU going to get knocked out. Indiana going to get knocked out. And I believe it's one more. But that's okay. We don't have to be in the 12-team playoff. If we can go and beat Illinois and 10-3 season, and Shane I think he's going to put Mike Shula as the interim offensive coordinator because he worked with Loggins closely and so this year. We're going to be okay. And I just want to thank all of y'all. Keep me in your prayers. Everything is going to be all right. Go game, Cox.
All right.
Love y'all.
All right, we love you too, Larry. You hang in there, my friend. Gamecock Larry. I think Mike Shula, I believe that's what's going to happen. I just think Dow Loggins got too much stuff on the plate, man. I think Mike Shula will be the interim OC/play caller for the Citrus Bowl, and he could end up being the permanent offensive coordinator. Guy's got experience, collegiate level, the NFL level, was a head coach in college. You know, so I could see Mike Shula, for continuity's sake, run the same offense. He's a guy that's worked well with Lenore Sellers. I can see Mike Shula just stepping into the role of offensive coordinator, and South Carolina moves forward, but not surprise me at all. Football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We'll continue looking through the bracket. Again, none of these games Vegas thinks is going to be very close. We'll continue on with that and finish it up. It is the halftime show. Terry Ford, appreciate you just chilling out with us. It's football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game.
I know we're already excited. Coach Tanner was just telling me at the awards banquet across the street that we've already sold out of our initial allotment, and we've already had to call back down to Orlando and ask for more tickets as well. And based on the number of people outside of coaching that are friends of ours here in Columbia that Emily's told me about, there's a lot of people that have already booked plane tickets and hotels to go down there as well. So we certainly need to take over Orlando like we did Jacksonville a couple years ago.
There's Shane Beamer talking about the first allotment of tickets already gone. So South Carolina calling the Citrus Bowl, going like, we already sold out a bunch. Can you give us more? I believe that we had a ton of garnet and black in Orlando right around New Year's Eve. Call me crazy. Again, 3 o'clock kick here on the game in Columbia, 107.5, and our affiliate in Myrtle Beach at 100.3 The Game. Our local Gamecocks game day pregame show on 107.5 The Game. We'll get everything rolling at 10 a.m. on New Year's Eve, getting you ready for South Carolina and Illinois. Ranked versus ranked. There's only 3 of those games this year, ranked versus ranked. All right, we were looking at the college football playoff bracket. And again, I think Texas beats Clemson in Austin. Ohio State and Tennessee could get interesting. If Tennessee can handle the first quarter and not let Ohio State get rolling, Volunteers can make this game very tight. Tennessee's defense is legit. They run the ball, and Ohio State hasn't gone up against a running game like that. The way Tennessee spreads the field with their wide receivers, and it makes the box light, and it really helps the Volunteer running game, and Dylan Sampson's a high-level running back. That game could get very, very, very hazardous for Ohio State. Like Kirk Herbstreit said, if the Buckeyes are stumbling or scuffling, especially early on, will their fans turn on them in the horseshoe? It's interesting. All right, the other first-round games. SMU, a 9-point dog going to State College. I think SMU will probably fare better than we think off the top of our head, but I believe at home Penn State should win that game. Would I be surprised if Big Game James lost another big game? Not at all. I think SMU could cover the 9, but I believe Penn State will win. I think Penn State's offense is better than it's been the last few years, just with what they do. And I think that'll be enough. And SMU loves to turn the ball over. They turned the ball over early in that Clemson game in the ACC Championship, and it put them behind the 8 ball. They're very loose with the rock. So I think Penn State wins, but I could see SMU covering that. And again, if you're Penn State, then you get Boise State. You like that matchup. Not to say you're going to beat them, but you like that matchup. Beats the heck out of playing Georgia or Oregon again. Then Indiana, Notre Dame in South Bend. Notre Dame a 7.5-point favorite. I think Notre Dame wins. Look, I love Indiana. I'm going to be rooting for Coach Sig and the Hoosiers, but I think Notre Dame will just run the ball down their throat. Wear them down. I mean, Indiana's defense is good. It's really good against the run and the pass. But I think Notre Dame eventually just wear them down and win that game. They go on and get beat by Georgia. So I could see Georgia, Penn State, Oregon will look, Oregon, the one concerning thing from that Big Ten championship game was watching how Penn State ran the ball on Oregon as that game went along. So either Tennessee or Ohio State, and obviously Ohio State played Oregon, tough to the very end in Eugene. So Oregon, it's not easy for Oregon. And then if Texas beats Clemson, I think they will. They should handle Arizona State and move on. All right, coming up next, our buddy Mike Uva from Gamecock Central. We're going to talk about all these different Gamecock things that are going on in the world of South Carolina. That is next. Football in the 1 o'clock hour on the halftime show with Terry Fort on the game. All right, halftime show. We're going to preempt the text the hour. We got more important stuff to do here. We got Mike Uva in the Newark airport from Gamecock Central, fearing for his life, and also the smell of Newark is always a good thing. So we appreciate you risking your life to hop on here, man. Thanks.
Yeah, I was happy to have some South Carolina barbecue the other day, and now I'm starving. And I saw some barbecue up in New York, and I would not touch that with a 6-foot pole. Maybe 2 6-foot poles.
There's got to be some great food choices in the Newark airport.
I got a Shake Shack here. I'm just walking around a Jersey, Mike, so I don't know. Maybe we could ask the viewers what I should take a shot at, but it will definitely not be New York barbecue, I can tell you that much.
All right, man, there's a ton of Gamecock stuff. We'll start with Citrus Bowl against Illinois.
Yep.
Give me your thoughts, my friend.
Look, a lot of us feel that the committee didn't get it right, and I get that. But I'm glad that the Citrus Bowl committee at least got this right in being able to reward South Carolina because, I mean, as Shane Beamer mentioned yesterday with the number of allotted tickets that have already been given out. I mean, Ray Tanner, who some people are asking, wait a minute, I thought Ray Tanner's not the AD anymore. New AD is going to begin January 2nd. So Ray Tanner's still doing some work here and there, and he'll be making a few phone calls to make sure that Gamecock fans get those extra allotted tickets. Because, look, outside of how they finish down the stretch, and it starts with their performance, no question about it, but we know that this fan base travels extremely well. And with all due respect to Alabama not making the college football playoff, would you expect a lot of Bama fans to go to the Citrus Bowl after being kept out? Absolutely not. Gamecock fans, they're going to be excited to be there. Mm-hmm. And I think certainly with what we've heard about those tickets just going as quickly as they've gone so far, I think it just speaks volumes to that. And they have an opportunity, as Shane mentioned yesterday, to win 10 games, something that's only been done 4 times in program history. So I'm expecting Gamecock fans to be fired up, and hopefully we'll see the majority of these guys playing because it means a lot to Shane and this program and what it could mean heading into the future.
Mike, you have a Gamecock Central hanging out with us on the halftime show on the game. Let's go to that point real quick. Obviously, the ones you think about the top of your head, Nick Amenwari, a Kyle Kennard, maybe a Demetrius Knight, a Rocket Sanders. Give me your gut out of those guys. Who do you think's most likely that would possibly opt out?
I'm going to get myself in trouble. I'm trying to avoid getting a phone call from Shane or a text saying, like, really, man? So I'm going to dance around that question a little bit because, in all seriousness, I don't know if it's fair for me to make those assumptions because, look, like a guy like Nick Amenwari, right, obviously he's had a phenomenal year, and you would think, all right, guy has some high draft stock, or a guy like Kyle Kennard. But at the same time, too, who's to say that they don't want to go out there and play? I think that's just people making assumptions. Now, having said that, if we do want to play this game a little bit, you look at people that may have had injuries in the past. I'm not going to mention specific names, but I think you guys can connect some dots. Because, again, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus here and get yelled at. I could see why a player like that might want to opt out just because of injuries in the past, especially when you play a certain position, if you know what I'm trying to say. So that doesn't mean that individual will opt out. Hopefully they will play. But I think the interesting part about all of this when we talk about bowl season and who opts out and the guys that, especially with the transfer portal, we're seeing it today, it's going to be interesting to see how many people are available in each room. Now, hopefully South Carolina is not in a situation where they were a couple of years ago in the tight end room, but God forbid they are sitting there, especially with some of the injuries. Maybe a guy like Luke Doty plays tight end. I mean, they're going to get creative, and I think if anyone will be more prepared this time around to be able to handle those circumstances, it's going to be Shane Beamer and this coaching staff.
Mike, you've been hanging out with us, dancing around questions from Gamecock Central here on the halftime show. Hey, speaking of transfer portal, again, it's early. It doesn't seem like, hopefully, South Carolina won't lose any important pieces into the portal, just guys who want to go get more playing time, who are stuck at like the 3s or the 4s or whatever. If I said to you, just pick one position you want to see South Carolina attack in the portal, which one would it be?
I'd say defensive tackle, just because of what they are losing and what they could potentially lose. I mean, TJ Sanders, yes, he does have an extra year of eligibility, but he's a guy that's receiving a lot of buzz right now from NFL scouts. I mean, I talked to a couple regional guys throughout the year, And that was a name that constantly got brought up anytime I talked to scouts. And I think a lot of that has to do with not just what TJ was able to do in this defense as a whole, but specifically what this defensive line room was able to do, the edges and the D tackles. So, look, as we saw throughout the season, that was a fun defense to watch. And just the pressure that they were able to put up front, not just the edges, but the D tackles, all those guys certainly got their names out there. And, you know, a guy like Dylan Storr, yeah, he still has a couple more years to go until we're talking about him getting ready for the NFL. But there's a lot of guys that raised their draft stock. So I just feel like with that D tackle room, I mean, as talented as what they have at edge, and I'm excited to see what a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. can do and a guy like Desmond Umeozulu, some of those returners come back in that edge room across from Dylan Storr. But you still need to be able to make sure that you get some guys to that D tackle room. So I think that would be the first one, because if you do that, that's not saying it takes everything off the back end. You still need some talented guys in the back end. But if you have a good pass rush, it can cover up. I've used this term before. It can act like makeup. It can cover up some of those blemishes in the back end if you do have such a dominant pass rush as we saw this year. It does help, too, when you have guys like Nick Eamon-Worry, O.D. Fortune, the way that they covered this year. No question about that.
Mike, you were with us hanging out in the Newark airport, trying not to get mugged, hanging out talking some Gamecock football with us here on the halftime show on the game. All right, so Dow Loggins is the new head coach at Appalachian State. Scale of 1 to 10, how much did that surprise you?
Caught me by surprise in terms of just how quickly everything happened. You know, from the people that I talked to in that building, they got a sense that he wanted to be a head coach one day. And as Shane Beamer alluded to in his press conference yesterday, it's like, hey, look, I get it. I'm going to be supportive of you, but just don't go after the first one. Go after the one that you feel like is right. And I'm paraphrasing what he said yesterday. Essentially, that's what he said. And you look at App State, you look at the fact of the history of what that team has been able to do, and obviously, you know, you're in a conference like the Sun Belt, so if you finish with the best record in Group 5, you're going to go to the NCAA playoffs. You're going to go to the college football playoffs. So, like, I understand that. I think the thing that caught me by surprise more than anything, and I think probably for a lot of people, is just knowing how special this offense can look next year. And there's no question about the play of Lenore Sellers and this offense down the stretch certainly helped Loggins be able to get this job. But I think a lot of us were hoping, man, what can this be next year? What can Lenore do after being in this system now for 2 years and really having the offense tailored around him more this season towards the back half? Because obviously his skill set different from Spencer Rattler. And just like any relationship in life, the more that you're around someone, the more you're going to be able to figure out their strengths and weaknesses. And Dow was able to do that with Lenore. So I think, you know, naturally from the guys that I've talked to, they were excited for him for the opportunity, but they're disappointed because they just knew that what they have come back offensively next year, it could have been really special. And that's not to say it still can't be, but certainly South Carolina is going to have to make some decisions over these next couple weeks and months.
Hey, Mike, I know Dow Loggins. I mean, Shane talked about yesterday. Dow would love to coach the bowl game, and Shane would love to have him. But, you know, again, that you can say that, but once you start becoming a head coach and you look up and your plate's like, it's like, you know, going to the buffet, and all of a sudden you can't. It feels like Mike Shula would be the easy, hey, let's put Mike in to be the temporary OC, interim. He can OC, he can call the plays, let's see how everything goes. And he's a guy I think would be a candidate for the permanent gig. Am I right?
No question about it. And it's weird because I've gone back and forth with this question about, you know, not that anyone gives two rats, you know what, my thoughts. No one cares about what I have to say about it. But I did like the way that Shane Beamer finished things over in Oklahoma, you know, talking to some of those players over there that I, been able to get to meet some of them, you know, cross paths in the NFL with these days. And that was something that they really appreciated. I think the tricky part is the fact that Dal is the offensive coordinator. I think it throws an extra wrench into the things because, you know, Shane's situation with Oklahoma was a little bit different. So I think, to me, if Dal wants to finish it out, kudos to him for doing that. But at the same time, too, I think it would be a tremendous opportunity if it is a guy, and obviously Mike Shula is a name that I keep hearing. I mean, from the numerous players that I've talked to over the last, 2.5 days now about this, that's a name that they keep mentioning. I feel like what the big thing is that I've took away from just what a lot of them have said about Shula is outside of the comfortability of knowing, okay, he knows us. He knows our strengths and weaknesses. They said the guy's very relatable. He's very relatable. And I think being able to find someone like that can come in and keep this train rolling, I mean, that's the big thing. Now, don't get me wrong. And I get it. This fan base, they're going to say, okay, hey, what about this name? What about that name? Okay, what about this person? That's great. But at the same time, too, you already have the pieces in place. This is much different in comparison to some of the offenses we've seen in the past with South Carolina, in my opinion. You just need to find someone that's just not going to screw it up. You know, just, hey, what do we need to be able to do to keep this thing going? Because we have a generational quarterback. We have some good young wide receivers, and we have an offensive line that we've been developing the last couple of years. We should be able to keep this thing rolling. We just need to have that right guy in place.
All right, last minute and a half. I'll let you. College Football Playoff Committee, did they get it right with SMU, or should they go on Bama? What do you got?
It's tough because if I say that they got it wrong, I would have said put South Carolina there. Because to me, it's the tough part is, do you punish a team for playing in the conference championship? That's the tough part. I felt like with SMU losing in the manner in which they did, that they didn't deserve to get bumped. If they have got blown out, I would have said, they're done. Get them out. Get them out of there. But again, I would have had South Carolina, and I'm sure many people in Columbia listening would have had the same, and that would have been the Gamecocks getting in. I will say this, though. You try to find just some type of positive from all this, some type of crazy spin zone, Terry. What would have been more frustrating, South Carolina being in the position in which they finished in the college football playoff, or South Carolina being Alabama today, being in the playoff as of last week, and then Clemson keeping you out after you beat them a week prior? So, Again, you know, it's some spin zone therapy I'm throwing out there, but I was thinking about that the other day, and I'm just like, man, that would have been the ultimate kick in the crotch if that happened to South Carolina.
Yeah, that's true. Look at you go. Look at you with your spin. Nice work. Nice work, Mike Uva, Gamecock Central. In the Newark airport, now, you know, we can't help you. We're too far away, so just go find a safe spot until your plane takes off.
All right, that might be Jersey Mike's.
Hey, Jersey Mike's is not a bad safe spot. Not a bad safe spot.
No, well, you know, if you don't hear from me, it was great being on 107.5 for one last time.
It was great knowing you, Mike. See you later, man. Mike Uva, our buddy from Gamecock Central. Man, I've accidentally been to Newark. It's not good. No, not good. All right, Elijah Campbell is going to take you through the final hour of the halftime show and then jump in with Jay to do the postgame show again. Ray Tanner tomorrow with Jay and Elijah on the postgame show from 3 to 4. We're done. Finish history down the road. Thanks for putting up with us. We'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on The Game in Columbia, Florence, and Myrtle Beach.
What's trending at 2? Well, to answer that question right now, I'm Elijah Campbell filling in for Terry Ford for the final hour of the show. And then, of course, Jay Phillips is going to join me for the final segment of this show for the handoff. But it's time to talk about what's trending right now at 2 o'clock. And yes, I know what you're all thinking. The Colorado Avalanche shut out the New Jersey Devils last night. 4-0. A big win. The Dallas Stars put up a six-burger on the Calgary Flames. They win 6-2. No, I'm kidding. I can only string you along so far. Everybody's talking about the college football playoff, the first ever 12-team college football playoff. And there's a lot of controversy, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if I want to necessarily say that the fielding is controversial, because I think we expected 11 of the 12 spots to be what they were, given automatic qualifiers and everything like that. And it took ESPN about 30 minutes to get to the bottom of it whenever everybody tuned in at noon yesterday to watch this thing get fielded. But I think for the most part, they got it right. I mean, I'm actually really surprised, and I said this on the postgame show on Friday within the last few segments of the show, that I don't want to see what the decision is if Clemson beats SMU in any fashion. And if it comes down to SMU, Alabama, you could have given me, a bet to save my life on what I think was going to happen, and I would have told you Alabama's getting in over SMU. That if you gave the committee a chance to put Alabama in, a name-brand SEC school in over to a school like SMU, that they were going to do it. They were going to have, if any reason they were going to get to do it, they would do it. But they didn't. SMU, the last team into the field, and they're going to have to travel to play Penn State. A lot of people found it controversial. I don't also necessarily agree with the take itself that strength of schedule just wasn't considered. I firmly do believe Ward Manuel when he says it was considered. Maybe it's not as highly considered as people would like it to be, but it was considered. And I know that because the three teams that still were in the discussion going into the final or the penultimate rankings had 3 losses, right? I went over this last week a little bit with Jay, that if strength of schedule straight up didn't matter, like Clemson, if they didn't get into the college football, if they didn't get into the ACC championship game, rather, would not have been in consideration. They were 9-3. Their ACC schedule kept them out of the discussion to be in at large. They're in because they won their conference, right? But 10-2 BYU beat SMU on the road earlier in the year. That's a pretty big win. They beat some really good teams. They were 10-2. The only reason the reason they didn't get a chance to get in is because they didn't get into the Big 12 title game. They're every bit as good as Iowa State. Lost to Arizona State late in the game, but they weren't considered to be an at-large bid in the college football playoff, even at 10-2. Why would that be, Elijah? Well, because I don't think the committee valued their schedule. So they weren't even in the discussion. At any point, was BYU really in the discussion to be in the college football playoff? Missouri at 9-3. That's another SEC team that was 9-3. But never in serious consideration for the college football playoff because their out-of-conference strength of schedule was really bad. And their in-conference strength of schedule wasn't necessarily good. The good teams they played on their schedule, they lost to, and 2 of them were blowouts. They weren't competitive against A&M or against Alabama. Ironically enough, the best game that Missouri played this year is when they came here. I think we know because Missouri always does that when they play South Carolina. The team that Carolina's going to play in the bowl game, Illinois, 9-3. Solid Illinois team. Won 9 of their 12 games. But they weren't going to have a chance at all the last 2 or 3 weeks to even be considered to be in the conversation. Same thing with Syracuse. Syracuse just got done beating Miami. That's a really good win. And if you want to argue semantics, a team like South Carolina, their best win was at number 16 Clemson, which is a fantastic win, and that does mean something. But Syracuse won against 13 Miami. Those are comparable best wins, right? But Syracuse's strength of schedule is nowhere near as good as South Carolina's, which is why South Carolina was even considered going into the last week of the season. And Syracuse was not. And at the end of the day, too, I feel like if you're a team like Alabama, Like we have one comment from on the YouTube stream from the Garnet Yardbird. I really don't think SMU could beat Bama, Ole Miss, or us. I would be careful about making that the decision on whether or not a team gets in or not. And this is where the whole thing is flawed. The system is very flawed. And later on this hour, I'm going to give you my solution on at least fixing the public image for the College Football Playoff Committee, because there's a way to fix this, right? At least from an imaging standpoint. Because no matter how you field this thing, man, somebody is going to get left out, someone is going to get mad, and someone will have reasonable gripes. That's the nature of fielding a 12-team playoff when you have no real standings connecting every single conference together. But when it comes to the Team A should be in over Team B because Team A would beat them, and I know this because they would be favored. Alabama was a 14.5-point favorite at Oklahoma. They lost by 21 points. Alabama was a 3-touchdown favorite at Vanderbilt. They gave up 40 points and got beat. Ole Miss was a 14.5-point favorite at home against Kentucky, a team that would go on to be 4-8. They got beat. They were an 11.5-point favorite when they went to the Swamp. And guess what? They showed up and they got beat. So I get that. Would Alabama probably win if they played SMU? Yeah, but the emphasis is on the word probably. And probably don't win football games. Because if it did, Alabama would be 11-1. Alabama was a 21.5-point favorite when they played South Carolina, and Carolina showed up and gave them hell for 4 quarters. Gave them all they could handle. I still believe if SMU and South Carolina played right now, that South Carolina would win. I feel pretty good about that because South Carolina is the hottest team in college football right now. But in terms of justifying spots in the playoffs, you can't make that be the reason. I understand the thought because I actually don't necessarily disagree. But at the end of the day, justifying leapfrogging would be really, really difficult to do. And that's where the committee kind of did themselves in at the last week of the season, saying that if you're in a conference championship game, you can't be punished. I'm iffy on punishing a conference championship loser. I really am. And I know in this business you kind of have to take a side one way or the other. Part of me feels like, yeah, you shouldn't be punished for making your conference championship game because that alone is really hard. But everybody, I mean, with the way the SEC is now, with as many teams as they are, and you can't just play everybody, especially when you have an 8-team schedule, we were this close. We were one good half from Texas A&M away from a 4-loss Texas A&M team, or 3-loss Texas A&M team getting into the SEC championship game. And then say Georgia beats A&M, and they have 4 losses. How can you justify putting a 4-loss team into the college football playoff that didn't win their conference? That would be very difficult, right? And that is a hypothetical that would be really hard to, or you're really glad never came to fruition. I know Greg Sankey is really glad that never came to fruition because then you're stealing bids from your own league. But at the same time, not using it as a data point is a little silly. I do definitely agree with Coach Beamer that the data point part, the word that I know is going to make him vomit if he hears this, is a little silly when it comes to South Carolina because you did beat the ACC champion, a 10-win ACC champion, on the road. That's a pretty impressive win. You have a win against a team that is in the field, right? Something that, only a few teams get to say, that they have wins over a team in the field. That should be considered as a data point. But when you go ahead and set the precedent beforehand that doesn't matter, you can't backtrack on it, which is why I'm really surprised that they stuck to their word when they said initially that they don't want to punish conference championship participants. Because I just knew that if SMU lost that game, Alabama would be playing in the college football playoff and SMU would not. If anything, they stuck to their word on that, right? And they proved a point that was a more prevalent talking point earlier in the year when Lane Kiffin said that he was talking to SEC coaches who would rather not play in the SEC championship game because they don't want to risk losing out on what the college football playoff is or missing out on the playoff as a whole. I think this proves that if you get into the SEC championship game, unless you have multiple out-of-conference losses, you're in a good shape. You're in really good shape. You're going to get in. Texas got in. Texas hadn't beaten a top 25 team all season long. Not a single team in the college football playoff top 25 Texas actually beat. And they're in. Texas and Indiana have a very similar resume in terms of who they've actually beaten. They've both beaten a lot of teams over 500, but not any that have cracked the top 25. But it was a no-doubter that Texas was in. Not just that Texas was no-doubter they were in. They were the highest at-large bid. People aren't as mad at that one. That's the thing. This is the tricky part with a college football playoff committee. A room full of people that are looking over various quote-unquote data points and having to come up with 12 teams each and every year with the certain parameters that they have. And I understand the complaints of the auto bids getting the buys. I think that's a very adjustable part we can make. I'm cool with auto bids. I think a conference champion should be awarded a spot in the playoff, and that incentivizes winning your conference. And that makes Conference Championship Saturday relevant. I saw a lot of people online talking about Texas and Georgia not having as much juice because both teams were guaranteed into the title game, or title game in the playoff. But watch how Georgia reacted to winning the SEC championship game and how excited their fans were to win that game. Winning the SEC and winning your conference still means a whole lot. And it still means something to these fan bases. And it meant a lot for Clemson to have a 56-yard try to win the game and get into the college football playoff. That was high drama. And that was a really good football game. Penn State felt deflated when they couldn't beat Oregon in the final minutes of that Big Ten championship game. James Franklin is dying for a win against a top 5 team because he can't beat a top 5 team ever since he took down Ohio State back in 2015. That was almost 10 years ago now. That game would have meant a lot for Penn State. Not just to get a bye in the college football playoff, but to win a Big Ten title and to beat a top 5 team. Looks like James Franklin's going to have to wait a little bit to get that monkey off his back, and there's no guarantee that they beat SMU either. SMU's got a pretty good quarterback. You might give Penn State some trouble. But there's one thing that I think can not fix the college football playoff in terms of its format, right? The format is the format. We got to live with it for at least another year until the TV deal expires, and then maybe we can make adjustments to what the format is. Next year, it will still be 12 teams. It will still be the automatic qualifier of winning a power conference, along with the highest ranked group of 5 winner, which this year was Boise State. Those 4 highest conference winners will get buys again next year. We're not going to change that format for a year until this TV contract runs up. So the format is the format. But there's one thing the College Football Committee can do to at least protect itself from total contradiction week in and week out. It's something I think that can at least shield them from a little bit of public scrutiny and make their jobs a little easier because they walked themselves into a no-win predicament yesterday. But here's a chance now that if they apply this moving forward, they can protect themselves from some of it. But we'll see if their television partners agree. I'm Elijah Campbell. This is What's Trending at 2 here on the Halftime Show on the Game. Halftime show continues here on The Game. I'm Elijah Campbell taking you up until 3, and then myself and Jay Phillips will take you all the way up to 6. Jay will actually pop in here with me for the last segment of this hour for the handoff, even though it'll be me handing off Jay for our own show. That's whatever. We make it work. But was thinking about this last night too, and I've seen actually other people talk about what can maybe fix the college football playoff in terms of its public scrutiny, right? Because here's a lot of the things that we're talking about in terms of criticizing committee decisions. You can't go back on a decision that you made or a proclamation you made from a week prior, right? Like Ward Manuel going out and saying that, certain teams are locked in, that the results of the conference championship games don't necessarily add or detract any data points. Agree or disagree that's one thing or another, but the fact of the matter is he said it, and you have to follow through with it. And when you have SMU already ranked 8 in the college football playoff rankings, and you say that, you cannot knock them out if they lose the game. Now, I actually didn't believe they would follow through with something they said. I firmly believed going into yesterday that Alabama would get that last spot and be in over SMU. But when you say stuff like that, you kind of have to back it up. You put yourself in a corner. Now, whether or not those people in that committee believed Alabama was a better team than SMU no longer became relevant, right? So here's the fix to maybe shield yourself from some of your own contradictions. Don't put out a ranking show every week for the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. The only rankings reveal you should have should be the only one that matters, the one at the end of the season. Because a lot of what we talked about, or at least the talking heads on ESPN talk about yesterday, is where teams were throughout the season. You can't justify jumping one team up this many spots and punishing one team with a loss that many spots. You put yourself in that public eye with these rankings every week, and different data points change, different things change. Like from a week-to-week basis. One team can beat the number 19 team in the college football rankings, and that team is unranked 2 weeks later. That no longer counts as a ranked win. So then if you're redoing all data points, you're going to have some wonky parts, like a team that was top 15 because they had 3 ranked wins, but then 2 weeks later, those 3 teams they beat are no longer in the top 25. They then have 0 wins against teams that are ranked. And then you might feel pressure to put a team that has 2 or 3 ranked wins ahead of them. But then it wouldn't make sense if you're punishing a team for winning. Say that team I alluded to, Team A, had those 3 wins that were ranked at the time, no longer ranked now, but haven't lost since then. It would look like you're punishing that team for continuing to win. And that's a bad look. Punishing teams for winning is still a bad look. But what the College Football Playoff Committee does each and every week is backdoor themselves into bad decisions to be made every day because they are putting publicly these rankings. These public rankings don't do them any favors. And if anything, it actually hurts them pretty significantly because then they have to be held accountable to their word on a week-to-week basis. When at the end of the year, you can start with a blank slate, have the data point, quote unquote, from every game, including a team like South Carolina, which would be affected by this because on that resume, it would say, beat ACC champ on road to end the season. That's a pretty solid point, right? And at that, then you wouldn't have to justify leapfrogging a team from, 15 into the top 12, even if they didn't play that week, because there would be no rankings to leapfrog someone on. You can just straight up pick the teams that you think are the 12 best. You have your 4 conference champions and the highest ranked G5 champion on one side. And then you have what would be the 7 other spots for at-larges on the other, without any rankings, like pre-done rankings beforehand to base it off of. You just look at resumes and you take it from there. We only allude to the AP poll going up into that, and not saying the AP poll is perfect. It's far from it. It has been for a while. But if you want to use ranked wins and use that as a talking point, the AP poll should be fine, should suffice, right? But publicly releasing college football playoff rankings each week really backs you into a corner into decisions that you've already made and already valued certain teams' wins. Because, again, I will go back and use a term that you heard a bunch yesterday if you watched the entirety of that selection show. Is that not all wins are created equal. One win in September is not the same as it is in December. The Alabama win over Wisconsin looked pretty good in September. Wisconsin ended up going 5-7. Wisconsin turned out to not be a really good football team. Things like that can change over the course of a season. But if you already put your flag in the ground for one thing and not another, then once you get to December, you have to justify leapfrogging teams that took care of business, even though they might have been 11th or 12th in the playoff rankings. It would, in theory, be in, but it would look like you're punishing them for winning. Ultimately, if you just do one at the end, then you get to avoid a lot of that mess. And it's still not going to be perfect. I think Josh Pate said it pretty well yesterday, that the committee had no chance to, quote-unquote, get it right because of all of these factors. And I think this is something that's pretty well worth listening to. And this kind of makes my point here.
I'm going to suggest to you the playoff committee could not get it right. They were incapable of it, not because they're stupid or ignorant or know nothing about football. It's because they were put in a no-win situation with the format that they have to deal with. I've been calling this for a year or longer. I don't think you had to wait until the results were final to see this coming. I don't think you had to see the field work itself out before you understood the auto bid in college football as a practice is a very flawed concept. The auto bid, 98% of you know what that is. But all I'm talking about is the fact that Boise State has a first-round bye. Boise State is ranked 9th in the college football playoff rankings, but they're all of a sudden number 3 in the bracket. Why is that? Well, because they won a conference. I guess we just think all conferences are equal. Therefore, if you win one, you're thrown in the same barrel as the winner of the SEC or the Big Ten or the ACC, and the 4 highest ranked amongst you gets a bye. It's dumb. It always was going to be dumb. But I think it took until this playoff iteration to realize, oh, that doesn't just impact who gets a bye. That impacts things downstream as well. So I'm going to suggest to you, as I throw out several thoughts here, we don't have a rankings problem so much this year as we have a format issue this year and at least next year before they address this thing.
And, I mean, look, releasing these things every week doesn't do you any favors because at the same time, if you really wanted to chart Boise State's rise through the playoff rankings, you mentioned the Boise State example, which I think is a fair one if you want to talk about which teams deserve buys, right? I mean, Boise State deserved to be at least ahead of Arizona State, I think, for the most part, because they won a lot. They won most of their games, all but one. The only loss was at Oregon, where they gave Oregon probably Oregon's best test of the year outside of Ohio State. That's a 13-0 Oregon team. But the issues with this are coming from formatting. I don't necessarily have a ton of issue with the rankings themselves. The format is one thing that can be adjusted. And maybe not having to do a 2-hour television special every Tuesday night where you throw up these rankings each week to get scrutinized. And then when things change and data points change, can't make the proper adjustments because you've already set a certain precedent. It would just be easier for you at the end of the day to just do one. The real question is, would ESPN allow that type of thing? Would the television partners allow not having the 2-hour television special every Tuesday night? Because it does what it's intended to do. And that's get us talking about them from a week-to-week deal. What have we been talking about the last, 4 or 5 weeks, the college football playoff rankings? I think we'd still be talking about them, but maybe not to the extent if we didn't have official rankings from the committee that does eventually choose the field on a week-in and week-out basis. They can still drum up the drama, and there's still playoff implications for a lot of games that happen in late November, mid to late November. But maybe you don't have to open yourself up to contradictions on a weekly basis. And unfortunately, if you are the playoff committee, that is what you open yourself up to when you do this for the whole last month of the season. Don't think they'll take a break from that one, though. Coming up next, the South Carolina Gamecocks will be bowling this year, and it's a pretty good one. Are you excited for the bowl game as much as I am? Does the college football playoff exclusion make you less excited for a playoff or for a bowl game like this? We asked you that on our poll question of the day at 107.5 The Game. I'll get to some of the results of that and go ahead and get into a little discussion of this bowl game against the Illinois Fighting Illini when the halftime show continues. Halftime show rolls along here. I'm Elijah Campbell in for Terry Ford. He had business stuff to have to do. He's the boss. So he had boss stuff to have to do. So somebody had to drive the forklift here. So I'm here hanging out with you up until 3 o'clock. Jay Phillips going to join me here in the next segment. And then from 3 to 6, me and Jay hanging out with you. If only there was stuff to talk about. No, we're not going to talk about the thrilling action in the NHL last night, as much as Jay Phillips wants to. We'll get into a whole lot more of this. The news, the college football playoff, the bowl game, which it has been announced. The South Carolina Gamecocks will be taking on the Illinois Fighting Illini on New Year's Eve. And we asked you this on our Twitter poll today. Poll question of the day: does the Gamecocks' exclusion from the college football playoff diminish your excitement for the Citrus Bowl against Illinois? 8.1% say 100% it does. No enthusiasm for this bowl game whatsoever. 33% says yes, a little bit. 35% say nah, not really. And 23.9% say no, not at all. Very excited. I'm excited for them to be able to play in this bowl game. Look, at the beginning of the season, the goal was a bowl game for a lot of fans, right? You missed out on one last year. We had a December of Gamecockless football, and it wasn't as fun. There wasn't a lot of buzz around here. It was really unfortunate. We're diving into the transfer portal more than we normally would because you were trying to gear up for a huge season, a huge bounce-back season. The offseason became vitally important, and this one will be important too, but there are a lot of advantages of getting to be in a bowl game. And I think the thing that we talked about last year in terms of quarterback development was that Lenore Sellers was missing out on those extra practices and a full game of game reps. I think a full game of game reps in a bowl game helps a lot of quarterbacks. I think that helped Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee a little bit when he got to play the full bowl game against Iowa because Joe Milton opted out. I think it helped Marcel Reed at Texas A&M to play a full bowl game against Oklahoma State because the starting quarterback, wasn't available, and there was an injury, and allowed him to play a whole game. I think that probably helps your development a little bit, and having the practices leading up into that, I feel like help out a whole lot too. And it would have been nice to see Lenoris get that last year. Maybe you start off a little faster on offense if you have that. Maybe. Who can say? It's all speculatory now. But now you do get those extra practices for maybe some other younger guys who are going to contribute. We don't know exactly what the opt-outs are at the moment, though Shane was asked about that last night, of whether or not there were opt-outs that he knows of going into this game.
I've had guys before tonight tell me they definitely plan on playing, seniors that want to get this 10th win. I haven't had anyone tell me they're not. I met with some guys last week in my office individually, John, about their decision. They're still certainly on the fence, but I can tell you this, there's a strong groundswell, if you will, downstairs in that locker room within the team to go get this 10th win, and that's being talked about a lot as well. So we're going to give, like I said, give our guys a little bit of time this week to get away and refresh mentally and physically, and then come back at the end of the week, first part of next week, excited about getting started, and hopefully we'll have everyone still intact to do that.
And one thing that I really liked hearing in that clip was that he has been approached by older players on this team, seniors, who say they're going to play because they want to get this 10th win. And that's refreshing for a multitude of reasons. One, just for the competitive spirit of wanting to play one last football game. And I respect guys who will not play in this game. There will be opt-outs for Carolina and Illinois. And I respect that. I respect the decision you made, especially if, you do have a pretty good draft stock. And it is more than likely you will be selected and hearing your name called by Roger Goodell when April rolls around. I totally get it. And I don't hold that over anybody's head. But there is something I definitely respect about a player coming back in and playing one last game with the team they started the season with, especially when there's something really special on the line. Because in today's college football, sometimes it feels like all that matters is making the playoff, right? But there are certain things in college football that can still be special, even if you don't make the 12-team college football playoff. You can still find some joy in the entire sport, even if you do miss out on the season's biggest stage. I feel like this would mean something for this group of guys so much more than it would for Alabama, for guys who are at Alabama playing their last season, right? They're not going to care about playing Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl. But there are seniors on the South Carolina team who have been here for a while, who have gone through some serious ups, some serious downs, right? And I think the serious downs we can talk about was the entire season last year where you go 5-7. You have a lot of injuries, and things did really look bleak for a good part of that season. They helped turn it around. And there's no better way to leave a program in better shape than what you found it in if you win a 10th game in a bowl game, something that this program has only done 4 times ever. The University of South Carolina has played football for a long time. 4 10-plus win seasons. You can make that 5. You can be part of a really special group to have a 10-win season. And that type of stuff should still matter in college football, right? This isn't like college basketball where it's make the tournament or bust every year. But because there's 68 teams, right? And there's a larger chunk of the regular season participants that get to play in bracketed postseason basketball. Not that way in football still. 12 is a significantly smaller chunk than the 135 or however many teams there are in FBS. But there's still joy to be had. There's still, to me, a lot of excitement. Personally, I am still very excited for this team to play in a Citrus Bowl, which is the number 1 bowl game outside of the playoff. And they chose South Carolina. The Citrus Bowl had a chance to choose. They chose South Carolina because they knew that this fan base would be excited for it too. And I think they definitely are. And I think Shane Beamer knows that as well. As a matter of fact, he talked yesterday about South Carolina already selling out their allotment of tickets. Here's what he had to say about that part of this bowl game.
I know we're already excited. Coach Tanner was just telling me at the awards banquet across the street that we've already sold out of our initial allotment, and we've already had to call back down to Orlando and ask for more tickets as well. And based on the number of people outside of coaching that are friends of ours here in Columbia that Emily's told me about, there's a lot of people that have already booked plane tickets and hotels to go down there as well. So we certainly need to take over Orlando like we did Jacksonville a couple years ago.
Yeah, take over Orlando like you did Jacksonville a few years ago, and hopefully you can come out of this with a win. Because in 2022, you ended the season in remarkable fashion by beating Tennessee, by beating Clemson. And you still had a chance to end the season on a win, and you played well. It was a close game against Notre Dame, but you fell a little bit short. But you'd been really excited to leave Jacksonville with a W and end the season on a high note. There's a really good chance, because I think you'll be favored to beat Illinois. I think you're already about, a touchdown favorite to beat the Illini right now. Even if you have a healthy amount of opt-outs, your depth that you've displayed on defense all season long will still make you a favorite, right? And in bowl games, a lot of times money comes in on the underdog because the interest level of certain favorites that play in bowl games can waver. So you might see the line come down a little bit. But there's a really good chance here that you could take advantage of a really good situation, win a 10th game, win a bowl game, win the highest-ranked bowl game that's not a playoff game, and get to end a year on that and then continue the program moving forward with a lot of positive momentum and a lot of extra practices to help you kind of continue that a little bit, right? There's a lot of positives still to be playing in a bowl game of this magnitude. And I understand the disappointment for a lot of people, according to this poll, which has about 200 votes so far. About 40% say that it does, the playoff exclusion does affect their excitement a little bit. But I don't think it has for me at all, especially considering what I thought this team was at the beginning of the year and the growth they showed towards the end. I think this is probably about the best case scenario you can get if you're not in the college football playoff. Jay Phillips going to be in studio with me next to do a little bit of a in-show handoff before the post-game show kicks off at 3. Final segment of the halftime show coming up. Final segment of the halftime show. No, I'm not Terry Ford. And people don't tell me I sound like him either. So pretty distinguishable difference here. But I am joined by two friends. Jay Phillips, who I told you would be joining me this last segment. And a pleasant surprise. Some former South Carolina Gamecock, some Brewer fella, has made it past security while I'm feverishly pressing the emergency button underneath my desk for someone to get the intruder out of here.
It's a twin. It's Brian Brewer.
It's his evil twin,
Yes,
Brian Brewer.
Ryan Brewer will be here tomorrow for Brews Day, but this is Brian Brewer.
I knew something felt a little off.
It is Monday, right?
It is Monday.
Okay, good. Yeah.
If you're wondering,
You had me checking my calendar for a second.
I'll tell everybody why Ryan is here today, and we'll have Brews Day on a Monday instead of a Tuesday, which is like the rhyming thing.
Monday.
We had sort of penciled in Coach Tanner for today, but then I think Coach had some things to do, so Coach is going to be with us tomorrow. And I asked Ryan if he would be kind enough to move his visit from Tuesday to Monday.
I got bumped, is what happened.
You got bumped.
Tanner Tuesday now.
Yep.
And after careful consideration and speaking with the folks at Ryan Brewer Fence, they let him out of work early.
Having to pull
It pulled a lot of strings, honestly, to make this happen. But I didn't want to give up a day. But I'll let Coach T have my Brews Day.
That's right. You can call in tomorrow if you want.
No, you already bumped me, man.
Well,
I'm here now. I'm only good for 1 hour. I'm here now. That's all I have.
You get 1 hour a week.
I'm already here 10 minutes early. This is a.
Or let's blame our good friend like Charles Bloom. We'll just blame Charles.
We can.
I mean, it's not his fault, but we could blame him. I'm not taking responsibility.
You can blame anybody. I mean, you
Isn't that what we're doing anyway today?
Anybody.
It's just let's just blame everybody for everything.
It is a blame.
Yes.
It is a blame kind of day.
That's the heart of our entire medium, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Well, that's fair. Which isn't great, but
this is a format where we just get to blame people.
The
all
woulda,
day
coulda,
long.
shouldas, and you are wrong.
Yeah,
we are right.
A lot of that.
Ifs and thans, pots and pans. The world becoming a kitchen.
You know what? So we don't spend a lot of time when you're on with us next hour, like in a more official capacity. Mm-hmm. Should Carolina fans care that much that Clemson's in the playoff?
I thought that's the whole show coming in the next hour, but no. Yes, no. It's one of.
I mean, you beat them, right? Like you have one.
Like bragging rights. It's like, hey, we just beat you, or I guess 2 weeks ago now, and yeah, I feel pretty good about that part of it. But as a garnet and black blood running through my veins, it's hard to see orange and purple in the playoffs. It is. It just. But at the same time, hey, congrats, you're in there, and you won. We get the consolation prize of going to Orlando. Playing an Illinois team.
New Year's with Mickey and the crew is fun. I've done it a couple times covering bowl games. This year it's going to be Elijah.
But if they do win,
yeah, I get to see Mickey.
If they beat Tennessee, if they go on to Texas.
Well, I don't think they're going to beat Texas. I don't know though.
Anything can happen.
Yeah. They catch fire.
I did think they would beat SMU, and then they nearly choked it away, and then they got and then SMU let them get down the field goal range. I was like, man, you got to play some defense.
Had to. That was brutal.
Didn't play enough defense.
And
then SMU was
56-yard field goal. What I mean, that kid has some fun.
You earned it.
Yeah. That's
freshman. That's big time, man. That's.
But I just apparently
nowadays that's nothing. Right?
I didn't see it. I was
the college ranks.
I was very busy with family yesterday, and so I did not pay attention. I mean, I got the alerts on my phone, but I certainly didn't open up Twitter or anything. But I did this morning watch Josh Pate's show, which he did yesterday. So I was a little behind, 18 hours or so behind. And he made mention of the fact that a lot of Clemson fans were trolling Carolina fans over making the playoff. And I thought, I thought only one game mattered, and then so it's funny how you get to pick and choose when I guess I
get that side. Look,
the rivalry never really stops.
They can talk that trash because they are in it to win it still, and that's a big deal. But yes, it's the one game that mattered this year. We got the W.
Yeah.
But now they have a lot more. They can go for something a lot greater than we can.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's some bragging rights there. I get that because you're in a lower end conference that you plays nobody, and you get a chance to go on in the college football playoffs. Good for you.
The game still mattered, though. That's one thing I have a problem with, people being upset. Like, well, I guess the Palmetto Bowl didn't matter then, or I guess the rivalry game didn't matter. Don't tell that to the players who won that game after that.
Oh, it
on
matters.
the field after the game.
Matters.
It matters.
It matters.
Right? It still matters.
Listen.
A ton. That's still what college football is all about at the end of the day. Like, the games that are played in rivalry week are the ones we're still going to remember more than a random first rounder in the college football playoff when we water this thing down and expand it.
If my memory is right, and I'm getting older now, but I believe the year before you got to college, it was two bad teams playing each other. I want to say it was 98 in Clemson. And it wasn't, back then. Now, of course, with streaming services, everything and then some is available live. But believe it or not, in the late 90s, not everything was still available live all the time. And because both teams were bad, nobody was going to pick it up. So that game wasn't going to be televised, all right? And this state, like the only time in my lifetime that the two fan bases got together was to make certain that, 1-win South Carolina and 2-win Clemson was on television, man. I mean, so
it's how much it still matters.
My point is, it always matters who wins that football game. So
the problem is it should have mattered more.
Yeah.
It matters 100% between the two teams. It should have mattered more.
Well, and we have time to talk about that. So I'll let you get us out of here because this is not really our show. This is you.
Well, this is my hour. I mean, it's Terry's show. I've hijacked it.
Well, we just hijacked
the Elijah Campbell Hour.
That's right. Sponsored by Elijah Campbell Enterprises. And this is the end of the Elijah Campbell Enterprises Hour, also known as the final hour of the halftime show. Coming up next, well, everything you just heard these last 15 minutes. Post-game show, myself, Jay Phillips, and Bruce Day on a Monday coming up.